And then I really try and get them with this whole concept of seeing food as on a continuum more than anything else. So I try not to bring morality into food. So it's not good food or bad food. It's just like, this is better than this food. And if we're eating better than this, 1% better, yeah. Then we're just making some improvements. Yeah, again, approach goals more than avoidance goals. Then we're going to be making significant improvements.
All right, welcome back to the 1% Bttr podcast. Today we have Brad Strydom. Brad, welcome.
Welcome, Chuck. It's good to be here, man. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. So, exercise scientist, master health coach, and behavior change specialist in health and fitness industry. Transitioned from owning your own strength and conditioning facility to offering personalized online coaching globally. He now helps clients achieve sustainable health transformations by focusing on behavior change, nutrition education, and mindfulness. Love all that. Brad, that's my homework, but in your own words, what's Brad all about?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chuck. That kind of sums it up pretty nicely. So thanks very much for the intro. I probably start on the back end of it, Chuck. So kind of like the behavior change stuff. So like I owned and operated a CrossFit gym for 8 years back in South Africa. And it's all very well. I saw a lot of clients coming into the gym, doing that hour a day, 3 times a week, whatever it was. But a lot of people didn't address the stuff that happened behind the scenes. And there was like their diets, their sleep, their water consumption, their stress management, and the actual change that takes place behind. So that's the kind of area I started to dive into. And then when I sold my gym, then I went full time into the kind of the online nutrition coaching. I call it a nutrition coach because that's the foundation in terms of what we're doing.
Sure.
But again, a lot of us use food to solve different problems in our lives. So we've got to address the underlying issues. So we start with kind of mindset. We look at the environment. We look at the habits. And then only at the top do we sometimes consider some willpower, but it's not even a thing. Willpower and then knowledge. And most people have enough of that stuff. So yeah, that sums it up.
Something that you brought up and that I want to touch on is your coaching that focuses on the behavior side of things, the modifications around sustainable results. I think that is one of the toughest things for anybody that is trying to get healthy, improve their diet, get consistent with the gym. How do you approach clients that are stuck in this unhealthy world or unhealthy habits? Where do you start that journey with them?
That's a great question, Chuck. Everyone's different, right? So everyone's got a different story. Everyone's got a different journey. I generally start people off in a relatively the same place. So I've got a couple of analogies that I go through with my clients. For my style of coaching, I've worked myself with different coaches, and every coach has got a slightly different style in terms of how they deliver their coaching or they deliver their services. My style is more on the positive addition over the negative subtraction, meaning that I always want my clients to add more of the good stuff and not feel like they're removing and restricting the other stuff in their life. Yes, sure, there's going to be a level of restriction depending on what kind of habits they've built for themselves. But the goal is really just to build sustainable habits, like you said. And we do that by kind of creating a change in mindset, which we cover over the period of time. But we also engineer our environment to make this a lot easier. So here's a prime example, right? So I use couple X that wants to lose weight. Their habits are bad. They drink too much. They party too much. They eat too much junk food. They're out of shape. And they've just got to that point where in South Africa we use the word healthThe, but in kind of in general terms, they're just fed up in terms of where they're at. And the starting position for that person would be to making sure that they engineer the environment. So it's all very well, yes, I'm going to change my diet. And a lot of people go these days, they're going to remove sugar and they're going to remove this and they're going to remove that. And they generally just use willpower to try and get to this process. They start January the 1st or whatever it is, and they use their willpower to try and stop eating all this bad stuff that gets into place. Invariably, that doesn't last long, right? Because they haven't engineered the environment. So what we do is we need to make sure that we make the healthy choice, the easy choice within their household and everything that they do. And that just makes it a lot easier. So it's not willpower that they're trying to rely on. So that's the starting base. And a lot of my clients that come on board, we kind of start them in that same place, a couple of analogies in terms of what we're trying to create. And we always focus on creating an environment that supports the habits that we're trying to achieve.
Those environments that you're trying to achieve, are they not just food? Are they because where my head's going with this and what I'm thinking about is like bedroom, and making sure that you're getting proper sleep and other areas of the house.
Yep, definitely. Well, it's a great point there, Chuck. And I think it's kind of like when someone's trying to improve their fitness, or trying to create a habit of building fitness. It's pointless not going, all right, I'm gonna get fit, right? I want to get fit. I want to start running first thing in the morning. But to engineer the environment, what we do the night before is we take our running gear out, and we take our running shoes out, we're taking our running kit, and then we put that out in a place that makes the healthy choice the easy choice. Right. Okay. So everything that we're trying to achieve, if we've got a habit, and like you said, like if it's sleep, how do we modify the bedroom in order for us to improve the sleep, right? Is that making our curtains darker? Is that creating a bedtime routine to kind of slow down before you go to bed? Is it removing caffeine from X amount of hours per day? So it's just, again, it's creating an environment that makes the healthy choice the easy choice.
The thing that I found in my youth was exactly what you're talking about. And other people that I know too, they would get overwhelmed from making these changes. How do how do you limit people from getting overwhelmed and sticking to kind of what this podcast is all about, small incremental changes so that it's sustainable over time? How do you coach them on that mindset that you talk about?
That's a damn good question. And that completely resonates with me there, Chuck. I always set it from the ground up. So when we start the coaching process, I always let them know that we won't be tackling anything more than 1 to 2 challenges or 1 to 2 action steps per week, or every 2 to 3 weeks, whatever it is. It might just be 1, it might be 2. And that could be, again, that's the action that we're trying to do, and then it will be the supportive environment that's going to prop up that action.
Right.
And I'm very, very clear on that in terms of trying to. I think we're overwhelmed these days with too many things, right? Our lives are a series of tick boxes. We got to try and do this, try and do that, and I think that's what people. I think people think they're more capable than they actually are when it comes to making change, right? But change is very, very incremental. Like you just start off one thing, and I always try and get people to have self-efficacy, and what that means is that we do one particular challenge or one particular action, and then when they feel successful in that regard, then they're going to be more motivated to try another step. And then when they feel successful in that regard, then we add the next layer to it, and then we just kind of we're peeling back essentially, but just kind of building up. So that's the kind of approach that I take, just making sure that we just do one step at a time and build confidence in what we do.
So with you mentioning building one step at a time, I love that. I think that's so critical in just any change that you're trying to make with your life. But the other piece of it is, are you deciding on when they hit that successful mark, or are they deciding on when they hit that successful mark that they have achieved and it's ready to move on at that point? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So here's the analogy that I like to use with my clients, Chuck. So at the beginning, I always say, like, this journey that I'm going through with them is essentially like a road trip. I'm in the passenger seat. I've got the roadmap. They're in the driver's seat. They steer the vehicle. They're in charge. They're captain of the ship. So when it comes to making informed decisions in terms of like our meeting, like let's say we have a consultation, then we'll decide, okay, so like I might have some ideas in the back of my head in terms of what I feel like they should be achieving, but I often put the mic back into their court because they know their lives better than anyone else, right? So I could ask, like, what do you feel like you should be working on this week? And they might be in the background, like, and they'll just say, like, my planning is really, really bad. And I'll be like, all right, well, that's a good segue to kind of have the conversation. What about your planning is bad? And then we start to dissect that, right? Because in their heart, they might feel like that might be the thing. In the back of my head, I might think, all right, they should be eating more protein. But maybe that's not the first thing that we should be tackling, right? So it's always, what is the habit before the habit? And if they feel more comfortable tackling a certain thing for them, we meet in the middle. Like if I feel like that's not the point that should be going down or the road that should be going down yet, then we might steer it off, or I might guide them in that regard. But for the most part, I always allow them the opportunity to steer their own vehicle because they know their lives better than anyone else. And I don't want to steal that away from them at the end of the day.
Yeah. when you're steering the own vehicle, I'm in inside sales coaching that I do, and a big thing that I try to focus on is leading them to the answer and allowing them to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And like you said, steer the vehicle, and it's almost an educational process that they're going through and learning. As the years have passed, I feel like the education side of things on nutrition has really, really improved. But what does that role play in your coaching for your clients to achieve what they're looking to do for long-term success and not just short-term success? That information that they need to hold on to and that education process, kind of like going to school for it.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Chuck. The way I like to sum it up is that essentially we all need to know the ratios between, the foundations that I look at are the importance of vegetables, right? From a fiber perspective, the importance of protein, the importance of that from a longevity perspective, from muscle preservation, from putting muscle on your body, even whether you look to put on weight, lose weight, put on muscle, the importance of protein in that regard. Then we look at carbs, we look at the importance in the role that carbohydrates plays in their diet, we look at the healthy fats that plays in their diet. How does sleep impact the decisions we make the following day? If you have a bad night's sleep, the probability of waking up tomorrow morning in a grumpy mood where the world doesn't look so great is pretty high, and that will impact what we eat, right? So you might think you have got a food problem, but you've actually got a sleep problem. So we educate regarding that. So whatever stage that particular client, I've got clients that don't need to have sleep being addressed, but then I have got clients that got sleep to be addressed. So it just depends on what clients coming on board with will be what we address. And the education is, and I like to call it deep health, is that we're looking at emotional health, we're looking at our physical health, we're looking at our mental health, existential health, environmental health. So we try and have this big picture, holistic approach. I'm not a huge fan of that word because it gets overused a bit, but we're trying to look holistically in terms of what we're trying to achieve with the client. And there's education within that as well.
Totally.
And I firmly believe in autonomy, right? So back in the days of owning a CrossFit gym, I always believed that, it's a group fitness model, right? But every client or every member that comes to that gym, and this is my thinking, is that if you cannot create autonomous members, then you're doing a disservice to them. And what I mean by that is that within a couple of years, that client should be able to go and leave the gym on their own accord and go and be able to do all those movements at home and be proficient in them and do them safely. So you give as much education, as much guidance as possible that they can leave as and when they want, but they choose to stay for X, Y, and Z reason, right? So the same advice is the same guidance in terms of what I do with my nutrition coaching, is that I'm trying to provide as much information in bite-sized information that it allows them to make changes without me. So within 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, I want them to feel autonomous in terms of being able to make these decisions upon themselves. So like a skill set, really, like you said, like it's going to school, you learn a curriculum, you learn skills, and it's whether it's in how their mind works and how that relates to food or it's food itself.
You made so many good points, and something that I have thought about is how their mind works and the mindset side of things. And a question that I have for you and something that I'm curious about is the hard truth that you have to give the people sometimes, of kind of upfront of like, hey man, this isn't going to be easy. This is what you should expect, and that resilient side of things. And you emphasize this mindfulness and the decisions that they are going to be making. How do you guide clients to be mindful or making mindful choices about food, about sleep, and about exercising to where they feel present with the decisions that they're making through you?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Chuck. There's a couple things, right? So I'll go down the first one in terms of painting a very good picture or very big why. So right on the initial consultation, we look at like, what is their story that they've got written for themselves from their past? Because everyone's got a story. You too, which I'd love to hear about just now. Yeah. But everyone's got a story in terms of the decisions that the things that happened in their life. What have they done? What have they tried? It could be something in their upbringing, right? So I've got a client who says he's got an emotional attachment to food because every time when he was a kid, he would every time he cried or behaved poorly, his dad would take him to McDonald's, right?
Interesting.
And that stuck with him into adulthood. So when he has an emotional breakdown, what is the first thing he does? He goes off and gets
Big Mac.
Correct. So So everyone's got a story written, right? And whether it's an actual story or it's a story that they've written in their heads, like I'm not capable of doing this, for example. So everyone's got that. But then I also like to paint the future, right? So what does the future look like for you? How does Chuck behave around his food in a year's time? So we call it like the destination postcard, right? So we zoom out and we say, in a year's time, if Chuck had to send a postcard to himself, where is he? What is he doing? How does he behave? And sometimes, like, if you dig a little bit deeper, you say, listen, I want to be in better shape because my kids, I don't want to die, not seeing my kids grow up and get old and get married and have their own kids. So I think once you get a solidified why and reason behind why people are actually wanting to change, and a bit of a pain point, then it's something that you can always refer back to, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, like, sometimes when you have those hard conversations, I'm not always great, I must be honest with you, having those hard conversations with people and calling them out for what they like. But I think, if you phrase it right,
they're hard. They're
it's
hard for
hard.
a reason.
For sure. I must be honest, like in my court, I'm not great at that, to call someone out on that and say, listen, you've got an alcohol issue. It doesn't serve you. Or let me ask you the question, what does that serve you? And then if you just point the question into their hand instead of saying, listen, alcohol is bad for you. You shouldn't be doing that stuff. It's like, you drink too much alcohol. What does it serve you? And then if you give them a little bit of time to think about it, they say, it doesn't serve me. And all right. So if it doesn't serve you, then why do we keep on doing it? So we just got to ask enough questions for people to unravel that for themselves. And like you said a little bit earlier, it's like you want people to govern themselves and not feel like no one wants to be told what to do, right?
No, it's usually when someone is told what to do, it's like the opposite. It's like when we grew up and our parents told us to do something, your brain immediately goes in the other direction. So
don't do that.
It's thinking, you don't want to do that. And I'm with you on just guiding them down that path and uncovering the layers. Something that I've encountered just through my journey, not just through brain surgery, but being an athlete growing up and having setbacks, and whether it's an injury or let's just say you ate too much junk food one night and then you feel like crap the next day, and then that unravels to another day. It's kind of like this stuff is inevitable, though. Like we're not perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not going to happen. So when clients that you're dealing with, I'm sure they're all not perfect. They're coming to you for a reason.
Yeah.
How do you help them bounce back when they feel like they have fallen off track and feel like they failed? Yeah.
No, that's a great question, Chuck. I use an analogy called the toothbrush analogy. So I'll ask you this example, right? So has there been a time in this past year or the last 2 years that you forgot to brush your teeth?
Yes, a week ago. So, and then there's probably going to be a bunch of people that go, ew. Yes,
Yeah.
about a week ago.
It's because it happens, right? It does happen.
It does.
So the toothbrush analogy is essentially that, what do you do the following day? Well, the first time you've realized that you forgot to brush your teeth, like you make a move, man. You find that toothbrush and you find that toothpaste quickly. So you just get back to it, right? So the whole idea regarding the toothbrush analogy is the concept of consistency, right? Is that you don't not brush your teeth one day and then a week later go, got to brush my teeth. I'll go get my toothbrush. So the whole idea is that as soon as you have realized that you haven't brushed your teeth, or if you have a bad meal, then you immediately go back and you jump back onto the wagon and you have a good meal afterwards. So that idea I really try and entrench with people. That's the first thing. And then I really try and get them with this whole concept of seeing food as on a continuum more than anything else. So I try not to bring morality into food. So it's not good food or bad food. It's just like, this is better than this food. And if we're eating better than this, 1% better, then we're just making some improvements. Again, approach goals more than avoidance goals. Then we're going to be making significant improvements. But like, I totally get you, man. People fall off the wagon. We're human and we're not perfect. And I think that's a conversation we have with mindset, right? Is that it's the all or nothing approach. And that stumbles people, is because as soon as they mess up, then they feel like, I'm no good at this, right? So you just got to have flexibility. People need to understand if they do stuff up, that's not the end of the world. Just move on.
Talk to me more about that all or nothing mindset and how to stay consistent.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I see it with a lot of people. And again, like I think it goes back to, I think people feel more capable than they actually are when it comes to making change. And I use the word change because change is hard, man. Change is really, really hard. especially when we're trying to make lifestyle changes. Even with the abundance of information out there, people still get stumbled up, right? There's so much information. You can choose any diet. You can ChatGPT your diet these days. But if you look around you, how many people are struggling with their weight? How many people are struggling with their health? All the information's
More
free.
than ever.
It's all out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all free. But when it comes to making change, that gets the hardest part, man. And I think most people, it's like I can't believe, like, there's organizations here, and I stand to be corrected. You can give me your input on this and whether or not my thinking's right or wrong. But there's organizations here that run these annual things where it's like Dry July, where you don't drink alcohol for July. Okay. And then the money goes to some organization as a charity. And I think to myself, that's the worst idea. So you're telling someone who's got a drinking problem just to stop drinking for a month. And then, well, after that, then you can just carry on doing what you're doing, right?
You're putting a limit on it. You're putting a limit on the amount of time. And then it's like, okay, once I hit, I don't know if is there 31 days in July? But whatever you hit August 1st, you're like, oh, I'm back to exactly what I was doing. That's why I personally am not a fan of fad diets that are only a certain amount of time. I look at it more of like, create a lifestyle that you can sustain over time. Like, what are you comfortable living with?
And I think that's great point there, Chuck. I think that's where people make the big mistake, right? So they go on like a diet for the diets actually mean, I'll use an example, right? Ketogenic diet, right? Which I think is a great diet. But I think when people do it, they go in with this willpower mentality from a ketogenic perspective. So I'm going to white knuckle this process, right? I'm not going to eat any carbs. I'm not going to eat any sugars. And they don't create a supportive environment. They don't address this in terms of, like, if they have a bad mood, if they're in a bad mood, like a stressful day, then they go and eat all the carbohydrates, regardless of whether or not on the ketogenic diet or not, right? They go to the coffee shop and they eat the pie and they're like, screw it, I'm just going to do it.
Right.
So and I don't want to call it a fad diet because it serves a lot of good purpose in some people, but there's a lot of white knuckling. So people think, and I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, right? I think of it's like an iceberg, okay, in the ocean. Right at the top, you have willpower. You've got knowledge, which most people have a lot of willpower, mostly to some degree, but it's fleeting. And then they've got a lot of knowledge, but that sits on top of the water. Most people think they need to focus on willpower and knowledge, right? But under the water, this biggest piece down here, you've got the mindset, then you've got the environment, and then you've got your habits. And most people don't work on this stuff at the bottom. I think people also want a quick fix, right? So people also want to they don't want to spend a year trying to lose weight. They don't want to go, in a year's time, I want to lose 10 kilos. They're like, what can I lose in 12 weeks?
Right.
What can I lose in 4 weeks? So
we're in this world now of instant gratification.
Huge.
Where everybody is just, you pick up your phone. You get a message back from somebody within a minute, 2 minutes. Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, ChatGPT. You can get an entire diet from that in the blink of an eye. Yeah. But I feel like this instant gratification has led to paralysis by analysis, where everybody is just constantly given all this information. Yeah. Yes. Is this the right answer?
A better way to do this. Gotta be quicker. It's gotta be easier.
I've been a victim of it myself. But you get to a point, I think we all have. You get to a point where it's like, just go, like, take action. I think that's more important than anything, like, than being perfect. Like, just take action and go forward.
Listen, I think that point that you just made there about being perfect and just taking action, I think that stumbles a lot of people. It stumbles me, man. We're thinking something needs to be perfect before we take action on things, and it's easy. It's like it could be like doing a podcast, right? So you're starting a podcast. I'm sure it took you a bit of time before you went, all right, I'm going to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's not have to be gold standard. I'm just going to go and do it, and we'll fix the kinks as we go along, right?
Yeah. So we'll laugh at things in a year from now or 2 years from now because we're all a work in progress. Like I've mentioned this quote in the past of like the past is history, the future is a mystery, and right now is a present, which is the present. Yeah. And it's super powerful because we did what we did, and now we're moving forward. And like you could think about the future, but just focus on the now. Like, what can you control right now, and how can you grow? And that's actually something I want to talk to you about, is embracing this growth and what that deep health means to you, and how can people start focusing on that deep health in their daily lives.
Yeah, I think it's a collective things. And I think you touched on it when you first started the call today, is essentially we might have spoken about it behind the scenes, but it's like, I think there's a difference between surviving and thriving, right?
Yes.
And I don't think we need to go down the rabbit hole of like this whole longevity, because there's a lot of guys out there speaking about longevity, right, and trying to live as long as possible. But it's like, you want more years in your life as opposed to more life, right? So that's like your point that you said a little bit earlier about like being 70 but still being in good shape, good condition. You're healthy, not on a handful of medication. You're still physically active. You can still go for a hike. You can still go for a swim. There's a lot of guys in the kind of the health and wellness space that I look up to. It's like the Mark Sissons of the world, Mark's Daily Apple, Mark Hyman, which is the functional medicine dude. Like, these guys are like well in their 60s, 70s. I think they're probably close to their 70s, but still in good shape, man.
Right.
And still being physical, still being active. And I think that's an important thing. And I think, the reason why you are there is because you've got this holistic approach. Some people don't have to think too hard about it, right? Is they just naturally get these things. They're involved in a community, whether it's a church or some kind of community that they're part of. It's like there's these studies of these blue zones, and I know that some of it's been demissed, but the central premise of the blue zones is like, I don't know if you know, Chuck.
No, I don't.
So blue zones are like areas in the world that have the highest number of centennials living in those areas.
I've heard of the centennials, but I don't know about the blue zones.
Yeah, so they a lot of the time, and I think it comes down to a couple of things. I've seen a couple of posts on it, but it comes down to like making sure that we eat a whole foods diet, like minimally processed food, right? I think that's an obvious take on things like that. Keeping stress, or at least kind of managing your stress the best way possible. Being part of a community, having people around you, and regardless of what that is, it's daily movement, and that doesn't matter what it is, right? So you don't have to go. I always say to people, like, the best exercise program is something.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and do X, Y, and Z. It's like something. Just go and do something. Carry kettlebells, swing kettlebells, go and do yoga if that's your thing. Go and do some calisthenics, go to the gym, go to a CrossFit gym, whatever it is, whatever keeps you coming back the following day. And get enough sleep, right? So like those are, there's some core fundamentals that are going to help your deep health in general. And again, like you said, you won't always get it right, but it's like, if you've got 7 balls that you're lifting in your hand, if you drop one today and then you drop the other one the following day, and then you drop that and you drop that, that's fine. It's at the end of the world. But if you're dropping all of them, different story. So yeah.
I deal with, so I'm still in my recovery from my brain surgery, and I can't drive right now. For me, I was a early riser, go to the gym. That was my time before the stresses of the day, everything happened. Let's go to the gym. I don't have that luxury right now, so we ended up getting a treadmill, a cheap one in the house, just to walk a few miles every day, get the body moving. Yep. We have some free weights, things like that, and that's just been helpful. Yeah. And making the most out of the area that you have to just create that action and not just say, it's almost that victim mindset. I mean, the world is kind of in a victim mindset. Not everybody. I don't want to put everybody in that same bucket, but there is this victim. Why me? Why am I overweight? Or why do I have terrible sleep? Instead of looking at the factors of like, what can you control?
Sure. And I love that. I love that control, that what can you control? I love that.
Yeah, control the controllables. Yeah. And something else, like you were talking about sleep, I was a nasty example of this, of just using my phone up until I went to bed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything.
Listen, I think you're speaking to a lot of people in that regard there, Chuck. Plenty. Yeah.
There's like this thing, and I wasn't playing games or anything like that, or doomsday or doom scrolling, as someone else referred to it to me, but just having my phone and having that blue light up until the second I pass out. So just replace that with a Hatch Restore, and it worked great, or it has been working great, of just kind of creating that circadian rhythm that's more natural than what it's been in the past. So I want to ask you, like, has there been anything that, as much as you're teaching your clients and things like that, has there been anything that you've struggled with that you've overcome and then brought that to your teachings?
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Listen, I'm not perfect, man. I've got my own vices and things like that. I think I'm almost like a fat dude trapped in a small guy's body. I've got an inner fatty, man. I've got an inner fat dude who's
You and me both.
yeah. But yeah, I think sometimes I need to grapple with my own emotional eating at times. Put that in place. Again, like I think if I've struggled with it, I kind of know what my clients are going through as well. So I think it's an important thing. But yeah, I'd probably say that's the thing. Sometimes I call myself out. I like to call it notice and name, right? So what we do is like when we have a particular action, then we notice it, we call it out, we say, oh, hold on a minute, like that's my inner fatty coming out, and then call it out for what it is, right? And then notice that behavior. And it's just something I've got to be mindful of sometimes, just yeah, that's it.
I'm with you on it myself. I have that inner fatty big time, especially after the holidays that we just had. So that inner fatty was an outer fatty for a little while. But I always come back to like, for people listening, what are immediate actions that are one small action that they can take to kind of light that match to kickstart their health journey?
That's a great one, Chuck. That's a great one. I would almost say like this is the case, right? Is that there's always going to be like the big rocks, right? So what's the biggest return on investment, right? And I'm always for like the minimum effective dose, right? What's the least amount of work for the most amount of results I can do? And it's like, and I say that not in terms of a laziness thing. I say that in terms of maximizing what you're capable of doing.
Sure.
We've all got a certain amount of bandwidth, right? Whether it's time, whether it's mental capacity to do things or planning, whatever it is. So I think finding what's the biggest return on investment for you, and maybe like some people might not know what that is. Everything's a catalyst for something else, right? So for a lot of people, like I don't know if you know Bttr, he talks about like exercise being a catalyst for everything else, right? So he's got a lot of good stuff out there. But he'll say that like exercise, if there's one thing that you go and do first, like exercise can be an amazing catalyst for things, right? And I think that's what's probably got people fixated in terms of, I need to lose weight. Let me go and join the gym, right? But you may not be addressing everything behind the scenes. However, I commend that individual for going to the gym even when they've got those problems, right? Because that could be the catalyst that set things into motion. So they could all of a sudden, like 2 months in, they might not have changed anything about their diet, but now they've got the ball rolling. They go, all right, I've got the confidence here. Maybe I can start to make changes to my diet, right? And they start making changes there. And again, like I don't want to do no 75 hard where people start today and they're like, read a book for 10 pages, drink water, sleep for 7-8 hours, like a laundry list of things, because that sets people up for failure to get all those things right. So I'd probably just start with one thing. And if that means just movement for that particular individual, like if you're already doing movement, it's not a conversation worth having. But if you're not moving, if you're not doing any kind of exercise, start with something like Chuck just gave a great example. Get on a treadmill, just walk, lift a couple of free weights, just do something really, really simple, man. And do that every day, or at least 3 to 4 times a week.
It's incredible what just doing that little bit of movement does too, because it builds momentum and the mind, what you just pointed to. It makes the mind stronger, builds confidence. The other thing that I have felt that it has led to as well is this thought process of, you know what? The workout's actually not that hard. The hardest part is just showing up. Just show up. I think that's half the battle.
Yeah.
I went to the gym on some days where I did not feel like going at all. Like, felt like crap, bad night of sleep, but I show up and it's like you start getting in that rhythm of just doing things, and you're like, and then you feel better after you left there. But it's like, you talked about earlier, just get in that state of flow and that mindset of things, and it's amazing what you can accomplish just through that.
That's a great point there, Chuck. I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of James Clear's work, Atomic Habits.
It's ironically fueled so much of 1% Better. For me, where 1% Better came from, kind of just what I was talking about in my day-to-day work before starting this podcast, releasing the book, anything. It was just talking to my reps of, hey, just try to get a little bit better today. whether it's improving your objection handling, or how you're managing your time, or how you're setting up your day with your time blocking and managing it overall. How are you getting to, because we all look at the end result, talking about that instant gratification.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
oh, this is that end number. How do I get there? And it's like, what's the quickest, fastest way I can get there? When it's not always, that's always not the answer. Working smart is, but at the same time, it's incremental things that you do every single day, and you just try to get a little bit better. So I was always just saying, like, Brad, just get a little bit better today, 1% better, 1% better. And what's that's going to do is build the momentum. It's going to build the confidence. So you're going to feel gratified at the end of the day too, that you did do those things. You're like, okay, I fulfilled myself today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've bought your book, actually, by the way. I've got a copy of it.
Thank you.
It's sitting in my Kindle. So yeah, I'd love to know if you could sum up your book. What's the general sum of it? Being the author of that book yourself.
First, I never thought I would be an author. So the story behind the book was, I came out of my brain surgery and I had really bad PTSD, anxiety that was crippling, that was very new to me. And I was fortunate enough to have a really good supporting cast around me that gave me the opportunity to speak to me and say, like, hey, you should start journaling. And that's really where it started. It was just like, okay, I'm going to start typing. And I had some time off from work to recover before I went back. It wasn't like I could drive to the gym or play with my daughter or go to these vices that I did in the past, like have a drink, can't do any of that. So it's like, what do you do in that time? And for me, it was writing from sun up to sundown, and waking up in the middle of the night and just writing thoughts and continuing to write thoughts. And before I knew it, I had a very lengthy document that my wife and I were just sitting there, and she's like, we should turn this into a book. Like, you
amazing.
have all the information here. And part of it is my journey that I went through of the recovery, or just exactly what happened. But it was also a recognition of, man, I almost had my life taken from me in the blink of an eye. And there's so many things that I haven't done yet. There's so many things that I haven't accomplished.
What a great perspective, eh?
And there's in the book, there's a lot of topics that I have taught to my teams: time management, health, getting the right amount of sleep. As much as people love video games and watching late night and things like that, if you're paying for something, you're gonna pay for the price later too. Nothing's free.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about that in the book through my own journeys of, you know what, I got to get this information out there. It's nothing that's brand new and groundbreaking and things like that, but this is just my own personal journey that I went through, and where I have found that moves the needle more than others. I also talk about detoxing from technology and how that's important for the mind, because we start to get run down, and you don't even realize it when you're scrolling through your phone, and then you hit a point where you're kind of in this negative connotation of everything, and you're like,
comparison or whatever it is.
Just take a step back. So there's a lot of that in the book, but I'm very proud of what it's become in such a short amount of time. I don't have plans for another book. I think, as some of my friends have said,
something bad's got to happen to you first.
My friends say your next book better be a coloring book or a pop-up book or something.
Make it more cheerful.
Yeah, something much more simplistic. So, but yeah, very proud of what it's become, and very excited to see what it does for people's lives, and not just from a productivity standpoint, but also people that are going through recoveries of surgeries like that I went through. And I've had the opportunity where people reach out to me and say, like, your book has really helped me through.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
the issues that I'm dealing with.
Chuck, can you talk about your brain injury a little bit? So just got an understanding on that. And I'm sure you've spoken about it in the past as well on your calls, but I'd love to know.
Yeah, so there was nothing preliminary that led up to this. I've had migraines since my early 20s. I'm in my mid-30s at this point, but I hopped on a work call, started getting a headache, and I laid down. And after I laid down, the headache just continued to get worse. After I took Excedrin, doing all the normal things like when you feel like you have a really bad headache. My wife is actually a neuro ICU nurse,
Oh,
And
wow.
she had a hair appointment that got pushed back a half hour. So she was still home. She was about to leave. And I work remote. So I was home and I was calling for her name, and she came up and started checking me out, and I couldn't speak. And she started doing tests on me, pulling my arms, follow my finger, say these words, and I couldn't speak, couldn't really follow her finger. A lot of things were wrong. And she's like, okay, we're calling an ambulance. And I kind of have a stoic mindset of, no, we're
I can
fine.
tell, yeah.
Everything will be okay. We knew something wasn't right. So I was taken to the hospital. They did a scan on my brain, and they found a spot in there, or a mass. And I went into complete shock, just crying, breaking down, like, man, I'm getting cut down in my prime, and like all these, and this is where the mindset of all these things that I've wanted to accomplish in my life, like, are getting ripped away. And that is such a, unless you go through it, it's hard to feel that feeling. But the one thing that I actually felt was, I felt like I was in an oven. Like the heat through my body was 500 degrees. But within a matter of 5 minutes, my foot went numb. And I put my foot down, and I'm like, man, something feels off. And my dad was in the emergency room with my wife and I at this point, and he's just like, just shake it off. And I collapsed and fell. And probably within, I'd say 15, 20 seconds, I went into a full seizure where
wow.
body started shaking, arms went back, lights went out. And I was medevaced to the University of Penn Hospital, which is in Philadelphia, ironically, where my wife works.
Wow.
I was medevaced to her floor, into one of the rooms that she works in. So her friends, other nurses were helping me. But I was in a induced coma for 2 days. And then they woke me up, and by that point, they figured out what was wrong with me, and it was a cavernous malformation that was in my brain.
You know, what is that, and what is it caused by?
Cavernous malformation, they don't know exactly what causes it, but it could have been there since I was a little kid, like since I was 4 or 5 years old, and I could have went my entire life without having anybody knowing anything about this. But how they figured out that I had that, there was a slight bleed, like a very small trickle of blood that came out that caused all of this damage. So you, like, if you think about it, like, imagine if that thing really let out.
It's like an aneurysm. That would be an aneurysm, right?
Yeah, very similar. Yeah, they're very close to one another. And before all this, as much as my wife has worked on a neuro ICU floor the last 9 years, I didn't know I didn't do the research. I had no reason to. So it's a cluster of blood vessels that never fully form. So what it was is this small, and it looks much bigger with my hands going like this, but it's a small cluster. And what they found was there's one piece that needs to be pulled out that caused all this damage. So I was very fortunate that they were able to, it was right underneath my skull. So very small incision in the scheme of things. I'll send you a pic off air of scar that goes through my head. You can't see it because my hair grew back.
You're quite lucky. You're quite lucky. You got all that good hair there, Chuck.
I'm very blessed, and that goes beyond my generation. That's my dad, who has a great head of hair, and my grandfather's as well. But yeah, it was a crazy incision or scar for just a small incision to pull this thing out. But I was very fortunate enough. I was in the hospital for about a week and a half. Once I did the surgery, everything went really well. I was out of the hospital then in a few days, and the road to recovery started. But the second I woke up from surgery, and I'm sure a lot of the medication I was on and everything, because I was delirious, just completely out of it, came this kind of light bulb in my head. I know the exact moment where I was at in the hospital of like, I'm getting everything out of my head that I have only shared with my teams, people that have been close to me in my life. And like I said, it's nothing new, groundbreaking, but it's my journey of how to approach life and the necessary steps to take with health, to take with your mindset of how you approach things, to how you manage your time, that everybody has 24 hours in their day to really accomplish things, but everybody uses it completely different.
Yeah.
And that's where it clicked in my head. And I had no idea what it was going to be, Brad. I just knew. I'm like, something is going to unravel through this recovery. And I was like, I got a second chance. And then the journey started. And I think a big thing, just going back to a health routine, is I was I'd say an 80-20 principle with my health prior to everything happening. A lot of protein, a lot of whole foods, making sure that I was constantly being hydrated day in and day out. I have the luxury of working from home, so it was very easy for me to step away, go grab a snack if needed, something just to refuel myself, take a walk outside, take a call, doing all the right things. And I do think that was a big part of my recovery. So then when I came out of it on the second chance with everything, it was now let's 10x this. Like, we were doing something right. Let's continue to push that ball. So, long story there, but
it's important. It's good to know the context, man, because it's
yeah. It definitely makes you look at things a little bit differently.
No. It's a lot of these things that you're saying resonate with me myself. So I'm in the same boat in that regard.
And I think there's another thing that I would love to ask you is the work health balance. And my work, I have felt that my health has improved more. I'm in my 30s now. My health has improved more in my 30s than it was in my 20s. And it's almost contrary to what you would think. Like, oh, you're younger in your 20s, you're older in your 30s, and same thing with your 40s and whatever. How do you balance that? And I think so many people struggle with that.
Yeah, it's a good point there, Chuck. See, my business is run from home as well, so it's a fine balance. I got two kids, so I got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, two little young boys, very active guys. Well, always like dad involved. Come dad, come play basketball, come shoot hoops. Come, let's go and do this. Let's go and do this. I'm surprised they haven't barged in here now. Hey, what's up, dad? How's it going? What you doing? I'm on a call, man. But yeah, it's a fine balance, man. It's a fine balance. I think. Especially when you tend to push on the side of like all or nothing. Probably that wouldn't be the word, but if you tend to push quite hard for yourself, especially running your own business, it can be a little bit tricky at times, So it's like you never really switch off. But I think there needs to be boundaries in place, because that kind of starts to filter into your life in different areas. I had a particular story. So I come from the ad industry. That's where I originally started my kind of working career. I worked in the ad industry for 5 years, and then I decided to leave and I started the CrossFit gym. But I always like to use an analogy, and I can't remember where I heard it. And I think it was someone who owned a CrossFit gym. They wrote this, and they said, like, if you've got your career, right? So let's say we're talking about Chuck's in this kind of the sales. That's his life, right? That's his work. Then he takes on. He's got a 1% better, and that's like his passion project, right? That's there. And then he's got his family. So he's got these three little pockets of his life. Then when someone decides to go and start a CrossFit gym, their whole life revolves around their business, their family, their community, their hobby becomes the business. So that they can't step away, right? So like it's important to have home, your passion, and work, right? So you've got these three places to retreat to. But it can be a little bit overwhelming when you start to do all three of those things and they fall into the same space, You get home in the kitchen, and then I start talking about work until 8 o'clock at night with my wife. It's not a good thing.
Have you found new hobbies or passions since you started your business?
Mine is downtime, eh? Those are my hobbies. It's interesting enough. My hobbies are downtime.
It's underrated.
It is totally underrated, man. Like just downtime. If I could just sit and just read a book, like honestly, that's my hobby, man. Just to kind of switch off, have a little bit of me time, and stillness. That's what I seek these days. My wife's convinced I should take on painting. I've always wanted to do jiu-jitsu, but it hasn't kind of made the thing. So, and to be honest, gym is a bit of a place for me as well. It always has been. I think it always will be. Just to take an hour out of the day and just go and do some weights. That's my thing.
Yeah, it's therapeutic.
Yeah,
going to the gym and just getting away from the world. And I have even found through exercise that I've been taking my headphones out lately, where I've just been kind of just want to be present.
Yeah.
And I think it's so powerful just to be in tune with where you're at right now, because then the brain doesn't wander. It doesn't think about what's going on over there, what's going on in the future. You're in the here and now. And I think that's where the best collective thoughts come from sometimes.
Huge. You make such a good point there, man. Like on 2 points, so if I go to the gym now, right? So if I leave from this call and I go to the gym, 100% of the people there will have headphones in. Let's call it 90%, 95%. They'll have headphones on, right? But they won't look up to acknowledge people. So like people live in their own worlds, right? So this like the antisocial behavior, and it's like weird. It's like we live in a lovely neighborhood, and like you said, you would love to come down to Adelaide. We live in a lovely neighborhood, yeah. We go for a walk outside, just go for a walk. But you'll see people walking with headphones on, right? And I think in this culture, you tapped on a little bit earlier about like this constant pursuit of more, right? So like, all right, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to get my steps in, but I'm going to listen to a podcast so I can get information while I'm walking. Instead of just going, all right, I'm just going to switch off. I'm just going to listen to the birds. I'm just going to have some good thinking. It's like we constantly, I think people are scared of being on their own and having their own thoughts.
Very much so. It's almost the modern day afraid of looking in the mirror at yourself. Of what's happening with that. There was this movie that I watched years ago. It was called We Are Your Friends.
We Are Your Friends.
Yeah. So it's about this upcoming kid who is a DJ and trying to make it big. Zac Efron plays him, and it's kind of like a coming of age type story. But there's this scene later in the movie. He always goes on runs, and he has his headphones on, and he's listening to like house music, EDM type tracks. And at a certain point in the movie, his headphones die, and he has to just go on the run. And they make a point of showing all the sounds that he's hearing: the birds chirping, the guy on the roof doing the nail gun, and hearing a car hit the brakes. All these things, these sensory things,
hypersensitive. Yeah,
that is so powerful. Just to like take a step back. Just be present. And we really do struggle with it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, man. I agree.
I got to ask you too, what books are you reading right now? Audiobooks, or where's the attention going when you can educate yourself?
Yeah. I've always been in the space of self-improvement, not self-help, self-improvement books. So I've got 3 books that I've kind of got on rotation. I read them manually. One's called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Which has got like it's like a 1-pager. And then I've got another one by Tim Tebow, which is like a daily devotion, which is kind of like a biblical scripture and some words there. And then I've got another one called it's by Robert Greene. It's called I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Greene's stuff.
Yeah, 48 Laws of Power?
That's the one, the 48 Laws of Power, but he's got the Daily Laws of Power. It's the Daily Laws. Yeah, so like it's just a 1-pager. So every day I just go through those 3 books, and it's just a 1-page bang from that book. So because Robert Greene's stuff is just amazing, man.
He's incredible.
He is, yeah. And then I love like the Stoic stuff, like Ryan Holiday's got some really good stuff. And then Tim Tebow, which is some biblical scripture in there. So it's like it kind of feeds my soul. Yeah. And then I rotate books, man. I got whether it's Robert Greene's book next to me or, I just rotate. I've just got to.
Audio or
no, I generally do books, audio books.
Nice.
I just do normal books.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I like something about holding it and
it is
and turning the pages. You feel accomplished as you go through it. I just to wrap up with everything is what's next for you in your coaching business? Are there any exciting projects or goals on the horizon going into 2025?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I've brought my wife involved in it. So my wife's a teacher. She works in the kind of the behavior sector.
Awesome.
So she's we've I feel like there's a gap within the market. I know there's some coaches that tackle parents, but like that's really our niche in terms of who we focus on. We focus on parents who just got a lot on the go, work commitments, life commitments, family commitments, and we see this trend. My wife's been seeing this trend. She's been a teacher for a long time. We've been seeing this trend of just how parents' habits are essentially become the kids' habits, right? So like we've got a real strong spot in terms of making sure that parents lead lives, that they lead from the front in terms of what they're doing, in terms of the health and wellness, so that we have a generation that comes into the ranks that's more informed, right, and healthy. There's a big thing in terms of kids that are getting fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, diabetes through the roof. These are things that can be all prevented, right? So that's our key. So this focus will be the year we'll focus a little bit more in terms of just making sure that parents lead healthy lives from their sides. That's pretty much it.
Amazing. Where can we support you? So outside of just listening here, what accounts, where can we go to just listen to everything that's coming out or follow?
Sure. So my social media platforms, so it's just Brad Strydom across all of them, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of those. And then my website's a good place for information, which is just alliednutritioncoaching.com.au. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to add all those links in the description and details of this podcast. Brad, absolutely awesome having you on. I had a blast with this conversation, and hopefully we could do this again in the future after more stuff happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff. Thank you, Chuck, and thanks for the great privilege to be on the chat as well, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No doubt. All right, everyone.